The Tin Man Podcast is a proud partner with DashClip. DashClip specializes in crafting exceptional wallets that go beyond mere accessories. DashClip is not just a brand, it's a philosophy, a daily reminder to embrace life and make every moment count. Check them out today at the-clip.com. That's the-clip.com. You are listening to the Tin Man Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Tinius, a former college soccer coach and avid music fan. This podcast is my way to explore my passions, get new perspectives, and help others share their own unique stories and expertise. Now let's get started with the Tin Man Podcast. Welcome back to the Tin Man Podcast. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button to never miss another episode. In dreaming up the perfect guest for a predominantly sports and music podcast, you might consider the combination of founding member of an iconic rock band and former host of his own sports talk show. That's exactly what we have in this episode with Steve Gorman as my guest. A founding member of the Black Crowes, Gorman spent almost 3 decades touring the world, performing in top venues and alongside rock and roll icons. We touch on the Black Crowes' music, the unique atmosphere around brothers Chris and Rich Robinson, and Gorman's connection with Led Zeppelin's Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. Steve Gorman SPORTS was launched in 2011, eventually being picked up for a 5-year run on Fox Sports Radio. At present, you can find him on the airwaves hosting the nationally syndicated Steve Gorman Rocks and Gorman in the Morning in the Twin Cities. Oh yeah, he's an author too, having penned his memoir, Hard to Handle, The Life and Death of the Black Crowes. We also discuss Birdies for Brittney, a golf fundraiser started by the Gorman family after Steve's niece Brittney passed away from leukemia in May of 2017. The proceeds from Birdies for Brittney benefit scholarships for local students and community nonprofit organizations. This year's event takes place on Monday, September 8th. You can learn more and contribute to the cause by checking out links in the episode notes. As you can see, there's a lot to cover in this one. Here's my conversation with Steve Gorman. Welcome back to the Tin Man Podcast. I am joined in this episode by Steve Gorman. He is right now with Steve Gorman Rocks and Gorman in the Morning. And most of my audience, you guys are probably going to know him as one of the founders and original drummer for the Black Crowes. Steve, thanks for hopping on here with me.
Thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so we'll talk about a little bit about a lot here. I could probably do 5 of these episodes with you, just being a nerd about everything musically inclined. But you're a good guest for this podcast too, because we also talk some sports, and then we're going to talk about Birdies for Brittney. I had your brother Doug on last year to talk about that, so we'll cover a little bit of everything. I usually like to start at the beginning and kind of get people's background. So before you ended up at WKU, I know you came there from Hopkinsville, but kind of just give us an idea, kind of those grade school, middle school, high school years, what you were involved in the way of sports and music, and what kind of ended up pushing you in the way of music.
Grade school, I started in Maryland. We moved to Hopkinsville when I was 10. So K through 4, I was in a town called Severna Park, Maryland, just south of Baltimore. And the first sport, I have 5 older brothers, and I also have 2 older sisters. Neither one of them cared about sports at all, but my brothers all did. And as a fan, as a kid growing up, there was always a ball game on the weekends anyway, and we were in Maryland. So the Orioles and the Colts, and then the Baltimore Bullets, that was my world. The sun rose and set with those 3 teams. But my family had moved to Baltimore from Michigan. And so my older siblings were all like Michigan sports fans. Like I got to Baltimore as a baby. I had brothers who were already 8, 9, 10 years old. So they were into the Tigers and the Lions and the Pistons and the Red Wings. And so we had this split right down the family line in terms of Michigan or Maryland sports. But sports mattered. There was always something on. We were always talking about it. And by the time I was 5 or 6, it was just typical backyard sports, hoops in the driveway, wiffle ball in the backyard. The first organized sport I ever played was soccer.
Okay.
And my brother Doug also played. He and I both played in the youth league there. It was the first sport for, he may have already played a year of baseball, but I'm pretty sure that was his first sport too, but it was definitely mine. And so it's always been my favorite sport to play and as a fan. Initially, probably because it was unique. Soccer wasn't really big in Maryland in 1971. It was bigger than it would be when we got to Kentucky, but it still wasn't a major sport there. So
Right.
even then, we were looked at as a little like soccer, huh? What's going on there? I think I liked that, just as a kid. It was sort of there's a piece of my own identity because when you're the youngest of 8 kids, you're looking for anything that's yours, that you can claim.
Set yourself apart.
It's a life of literal and figurative hand-me-downs. You know what I mean? Every bit of my life is a piece of 7 other people's experiences, kind of. So soccer was definitely that for me. And then as far as music goes, records in the house, everybody had a few records of their own. Our older brother Tom had a massive record collection, and he was a guitarist. He was the other musician in the family. So he had dozens and dozens of albums, and he was already playing in bands, and he would be in his room playing guitar. I had one source for that. And everybody else just had a few records, but it was a good mix. I had a brother that was really into Stax and Motown. Tom was really into rock. One of my sisters just loved Carole King and James Taylor records, and there was a good little mix in there. When I believe I had just turned 6, and I won an album at my oldest brother's basketball game. He was playing community college basketball. They gave away door prizes based on your ticket number, and this is a tiny Cracker Box gym. Probably holds 300 people. And sure enough, they called out a ticket number, and it was mine. And I walked down to the scorer's table, and they handed me an album by the Bee Gees called 2 Years On. And the hit from that album is Lonely Days, if you've ever heard that song. Okay. This is pre-disco by 4 or 5 years. And I took that album home, and it was like God handed Moses the tablets. You know what I mean? That record was mine. It wasn't my brother's, it was mine. And so I was immediately, it didn't matter what it was going to sound like, I was going to love it.
Right.
And I started playing that record around the clock. And at first everyone thought it was really cute that little Steve had a record.
I'm sure it became annoying pretty quickly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. After a few weeks, my brother Tom, again, he with the big collection, I was down in we called it the pool room. We had a table downstairs in the house. That's where the pool table and the stereo were both located. So if you were listening to records, you were usually listening to it over the sound of someone else shooting pool. Okay. And I was in the pool room. My brother walked in, Tom, and he handed me 3 records. He handed me Meet the Beatles, Help, and Rubber Soul. And he said, play these. Here, you can have these. I'm so sick of the Bee Gees. And I put on Help first, just as a choice, and listened to it. And when it got to Ticket to Ride, I lost my mind. I just truly heard that song the very first time it kicked in, and I started immediately air drumming to it. And I didn't really know what air drumming was. I was just flailing my arms to the sound of that very syncopated verse groove. And 2 things happened that day. I was like, okay, A, I'm a drummer. That's good to know. And I knew it, like just as much as I knew my name. And then B, I suddenly had a new favorite band. And that would be the Beatles. And that was it. Game over. There's never been another favorite band in my life. And that just over the course of, the next 3 or 4 weeks, I played those 3 albums so many times that then I would just start begging my mom for, can I have 50 cents? Can I have 75 cents? Knowing that I had to save up $3 or $4 to go buy my own Beatles albums. And my life became a quest to get the entire Beatles catalog, which I did in pretty short order.
Yeah. And at some point you have to, if you wear the grooves out too much, you have to even replace the original albums. Yeah.
I still have those first 3 my brother gave me. And I also have the 2 Years On, the Bee Gees. I have those same ones. I've never lost them over the years, but I wouldn't dare ruin a stylus by attempting to play any of them now.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy how, you just kind of had a epiphany moment of
Oh, big time.
This is sunk into me, and it's what I'm going to be. So you go off to college and you're at WKU. As Doug told it last year, you were maybe one of the first people to do PA for some of the soccer games, and
Yeah.
maybe in not so serious fashion.
Yeah. I got to Western in the fall of '83, and he was already on the soccer team. And Coach Holmes asked me if I wanted to play. It was a full on varsity team, but if you were, but the bench was pretty loose. He's like, hey, if you want to join, just come out. And I looked at one practice and realized, no, I'm done. I'm done with my legitimate athletic career is finished. I saw the amount of mileage they were running a day, and I said, forget that.
Well, interestingly enough, I got kind of the same sales pitch, and I was dumb enough to run around for 4 years.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
All right. What years was that?
I was 99 to 02 were my seasons
Okay.
playing. Well, I say playing loosely. I did a lot of watching other people play, but I practiced a lot.
Got it. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you were in better shape than I was for those ages of your life anyway. No, so I guess it was my junior year. I don't think it was my sophomore year. They started playing games at the stadium, the football stadium. And I by that time I had declared myself a broadcasting major. And I figured I'd be a sportscaster. That was just, and Sports Center on ESPN was starting to turn into a thing. This is like 1984, 85. And I just thought, what could be cooler than to talk about sports for a living? Like it just seemed like there was a lane there for me. So as I was starting to take my broadcasting classes, my brother said, hey, do you want to come and do the PA for these games? And I said, sure. Like, what could go wrong? And quite a lot, as it turns out. But so I went to the stadium that first game. There was a guy from the, Western Physical Plant was waiting to walk me into the big booth. Maybe 50 people for the game. I'm not exaggerating. 50 people total in that football stadium for a soccer game. And I'm sitting in the giant press box with just a guy who's smoking cigarettes and trying not to fall asleep. And he said, now there's a delay. When you turn the mic on and start talking, you're going to hear the echo. It's about a full second late. So if that's going to throw you off, don't even try. And, and of course I'm like, well, might as well dive in and see what happens. Yeah. And it was pretty weird, but for a second or two. I mean, it really took me, I think by the third time I turned the mic on, I had it figured out. You just talk and don't listen to what you said 2 seconds earlier. Anyway, I started announcing the games. I would announce the starting lineups. I would announce who shot. But most importantly, when Western would score, I would draw the deepest breath imaginable and just scream goal into the microphone for as long as I could possibly hold it. And it would, that's a loud PA, and it would just blast up the hill. And the games were late in the afternoon, but there were still classes happening. And my favorite thing was over the next year, in the fall of 85 and 86, when I would be doing this, I would always bump into people and they'd go, man, I was at Cherry Hall and it was so loud when you were screaming. We had to stop till you shut up. And, people could hear it all over campus. So in my own mind, I was at least famous for about, 11 seconds a few times a week on campus.
Yeah, campus legend. Yeah, I didn't even think about, there probably weren't lights at that time. So all the games were in the afternoon. Yeah, while classes were going on.
And there was also, it was just half a stadium too. It wasn't now like it was completely Benzer. I mean, I see that stadium now. It's like the whole campus for that matter. It's like a different planet than when I was there. This is 40 years ago now we're talking.
It's harder for streakers to get away now. You can't just run off the other side of the field and down the hill.
Yep.
Well, you finish up at Western and then you make the move to Atlanta and already kind of made the decision to chase the musical dream.
Yeah, when I was at Western.
Oh, go ahead.
When I was at Western, I started playing drums when I got to Western. I had a buddy who had a drum kit, and I would just borrow his on occasion. And then Doug and I have another brother. He's 2 years older than Doug, Dave Gorman. And he and some buddies had always talked about having a band as kind of a joke band. And in fact, when they all lived at Keene Hall, they used to announce the band and they'd say, we're playing. And then they would always cancel the gig due to sickness or death in the band. It was like performance art, just, very limited awareness, but they were just having fun with it. But when I got there, they were like, well, hey, you can actually sort of pretend to play drums. We should do this, because they had a guitar player. And so we started doing it freshman, sophomore, junior year, 5 or 6 times we played parties. And if you have a guitar player who knows the songs, everyone else can fake it. That's just what we learned right away. So I was one of the guys faking it, believe me. But we would play in town, and we would have a different name every time we played, which does not help build a following, in case you're wondering. A little counterintuitive there, but it was all just for fun. So all this to say, when I decided to drop out and move to Atlanta to start a band with a friend for real, I was talking a big game, but I really hadn't played that much. I had less than a total of 24 hours sitting at a drum kit. I mean, at most 24 hours total.
But you had the improvisational skills and the ingenuity that is required to be a live performer and go out and put on a show.
Yeah. You could also call that the bullshit gene. So whatever it took, I was willing to
trying to be a little nicer about it. But yeah, sure. So you get to Atlanta and you meet the Robinson brothers and Mr. Crow's Garden, which then turns into the Black Crowes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I could ask questions about that for hours and hours. I won't. What?
Well, that's I'll say this. I moved down there February 20th of 1987, and my last semester in the fall of '86, I was an RA at North Hall. And when I let everybody know I was dropping out and moving, they all thought, they were like, "Cool, that'll be great. We'll see you next year." Like everyone was like, "Oh, you'll be back." And I told everybody that would listen. I just at random said, if I'm not there, if I haven't made it 3 years, then it looks like I'll come back to a broadcasting degree. That was just what I said. Give me 3 years. And Shake Your Moneymaker was released exactly 1 week shy of 3 years from the day I moved to Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
As a fine happenstance, complete luck of the draw. Yeah. So, and of course, my friends all remembered that, and they're all like, "Oh, man, so close." Now, by that time, of course, I'd realized I wasn't built to be a professional full-time broadcaster, which is kind of ironic these days. But
I'll say at that time, maybe.
At that time. So, but anyway, yeah. So it was the 3 longest years of my life waiting to get that record out. And now, of course, 3 years goes by in the blink of an eye.
Well, and so your book, Hard to Handle, The Life and Death of the Black Crowes. Again, I'm not going to rehash everything in there, but I do have a few questions.
Sure. Yeah, whatever.
Obviously, the Robinson brothers are a little unique and eccentric, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think your experience growing up with so many siblings and constantly having to manage the different personalities, even within your own family, made you uniquely equipped to be in that environment for as long as you were?
Yeah, very much so. My strengths were also, as it turned out, my weaknesses in a lot of cases. A lot of times in big families, the youngest is a peacemaker, or if not necessarily a peacemaker, he's certainly not going at it with his older siblings. I mean, a lot of, the baby gets a certain wide berth. Everybody tends to care, at least initially, everybody loves the baby. You get a little bit of a spotlight on you for that. And, I grew up, there were sibling rivalries. There were a lot of blowups in the house, but very few of them involved me. It's just, I just didn't, it would be a whole 7-episode, 13 season TV show to figure out why that was, but that's just how it went. So I was always somebody who, even in my friend group, I always had friends from, like when I got to college, I had friends that were in the drama department. I had friends that played basketball for Western. I was hanging with the soccer team all the time. I had buddies who were already in bands. I just had friends from every different area, every walk of life, and from a million different things. I never really identified myself as one thing or part of one group. So all that to say, I had a lot of experience just getting people to get, hey, let's talk about what we have in common. Come on, get over it. We're all here to do this thing. There's just a general sort of sensibility I had. And so when I met the brothers, again, I was 21, Chris was 20, Rich was 18. So we're still, me especially, I mean, we're kids. I thought like I was old. I can legally go buy beer. I've made it, but
Right.
my kids are both I have two kids. They're 25 and 23. And I look at them and I just think, I can't imagine either of them throwing themselves into things the way I did, just because they're way too sensible. They have, they have way too many other great ideas in life, but so yeah, they were, and the brothers are just who they are. They're not people who, like we had success and suddenly they changed. They were who they were. I was who I was. And at the times when those things clicked, we had an undeniable chemistry that went far beyond just the two brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And different times of the band's career, that chemistry was really, really, really special. And it did go in every direction. It was never, in my opinion, the band was never just about two brothers and their friend, the drummer. It's like, well, yeah, we started this, we're here. But then when we brought the right people on and when we were in the right frame of mind, it was really all about everybody. That's what made the band special. The truly special, unique times of that band's career were when everybody was able to be at their best. And that wasn't, sadly, as often as I wish it had been, but it was, my summation of the Black Crowes career is, we were in the 100-yard sprint and we were in the 100 meters and we came in 7th at the Olympics, which it sucks we didn't get a medal, but we're still really fast. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
but we're better than everybody else on the, there's 5 or 6 guys that got ahead of that beat us, but we were still right in there, and that's the way I look at it. It was really, there were moments when we were the best thing in the world. And there was moments when it was like, God, how are we messing this up? And through all of that, I did have a sense, sometimes I was just flat out lying to myself. And sometimes it actually did work where I said, I can make this better. I can get in here and help, and I can keep this thing on the tracks. And, it's at the time, like I said, there was a lot of, oh, I got this, I'll handle it. Come on, guys. And then, and of course they're looking at me like they just want me to shut up and go away and let that, right. It's everybody's perspective is different, but it's not unlike any other situation. It's just when you're in a rock band, it's loud and you get a lot of people paying attention.
So yeah, and it's playing out in front of the world in some instances. So again, talking here with Steve Gorman, and right now talking a little bit about his time with the Black Crowes. One of the things that stuck out to me in the book is you kind of talk about the difference between good bands with great songs and great bands with good songs. And
right.
You kind of, in the book, you kind of put the Black Crowes in that second category. Because like you said, when you guys were kind of at the height of your powers and really clicking, the show was absolutely amazing. And I kind of think of it as, I always said when I was coaching, like if I had good players, even if I made bad decisions, they could still make it look like the right decision. Right.
Yeah,
and
sure. Right.
Even if they were good players, if I made the wrong decisions, I can make them look like bad players. So, you kind of get both sides of that, but maybe just talk a little bit more eloquently than the way I just described it about what that means, kind of good bands with great songs versus great bands with good songs.
Well, we were a great band in that we could musically, we were had an incredible chemistry, and our cohesion from 91 through 97. I'll just take that period of time. We could get on any stage in a club or at a stadium or at a festival or anything in between, and we could play and we could create a vibe between us. Just the music we were making was as good as any band on the planet. It was the kind of band where even if you don't care for the kind of music we're playing, anybody with any objectivity would go, oh, but they're great. You know what I mean? Like they're doing exactly what they mean to do, and they're doing it at the highest level imaginable. And we could take a cover song and learn it in the afternoon and play it that night. And you would have, it sounded like we'd played it 1,000 times. It sounded like we wrote it. We just were clicking on so many creative cylinders. And we had a ton of songs that were Black Crow songs that I loved those songs. I think we made some really great records. When I'm talking about great songs, it's not so much like good or better or great. It's great in the scale of there are certain songs that just connect with human beings for reasons nobody can truly understand. Okay. And you can say it's a catchy chorus, but it goes beyond that. And in the book, I compared us to Oasis, who, if you're seeing them in this reunion tour they're doing now, Oasis has well, a lot in the UK, but I think any place you go in the world, there's at least 3 songs: Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger, Champagne Supernova.
Mm-hmm.
They just, the second you ever heard those songs, they were a part of your head. They stayed in your head. They were a part of life around you. I've heard people busking on street corners in every corner of the globe playing those songs. They just connect. They're like, those songs are like, all 3 of those are like Hey Jude, or
Right.
they're like, Yellow by Coldplay was one of those songs.
Yeah. Well, I was to say my 6 and 8-year-old were walking around the other day and just started singing "Let It Be."
Yeah,
And my wife kind of looked at me and I was like, well, she's like,
Yep.
where did that come from? I said, well, it's a hell of a song.
Mm-hmm.
So they heard it somewhere and it stuck.
Yep. I mean, there's songs in every, in pop music, there's a million of those examples. In rock and roll, fewer as the days go by, because rock and roll bands just don't have like quote unquote hits anymore. But there are just certain songs that immediately, the Black Crowes song, what I'm talking about is songs that are, you might not even love it, but you hear it and you immediately go, oh my God, that's the thing. That's the thing. Noel Gallagher talks about Don't Look Back in Anger. He goes, I don't know what it is. I just wrote it. I can't explain why it makes grown men weep. He said the lyrics don't make sense,
Right.
So why try to explain it? There's just certain things. The Black Crowes had Hard to Handle on the first album.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a Black Crowes composition. Otis Redding wrote it. But that was a song that came out that immediately, it just made everyone stop what they're doing. Hey, what is that? What is that song? And so there's certain songs that we had that for whatever reason really connected. A song like Wiser Time from the Black Crowes' third album meant nothing to anybody when it came out. Over time, over 30 years now, that's become a song that there's a lot of people would say that's the ultimate Black Crowes song. That's, oh my God, that's the centerpiece, or My Morning Song, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about, and like I said, those are great songs. Those are tremendous songs. But the greatness of this just took over the whole world. There's just no escaping it. There's just certain things like that. So anyway, all this to say, I've never said the Black Crowes didn't have songs that were high quality, but that greatness thing, like Tom Petty has a million hit songs. When I hear I Won't Back Down, there's something about that song where I say that's his greatest song. That just resilience as a theme. And if you know the story of what he was going through and he wrote it, there's just something where it's immediately like, I remember hearing it the first time and going, oh my God, forget it. Like, that's just, I heard it one time and I never needed to hear it again. You're really lucky in a career if you get one of those, much less 2 or 3, or like the Beatles, 19.
Right. Well, and to your point, one of the notes I have written down is, I remember the first time I'd maybe heard it, but the first time it really stuck with me, Hard to Handle, was when I was growing up in Bowling Green and club soccer wasn't really a thing yet. We had a little team that would go down to like Hendersonville, Tennessee, outside of Nashville. But I remember being Harvey Johnston, my friend Kyle Johnston's dad, was driving us home from a game one time, and he had at that time had a cassette tape of it and popped it in. And I remember thinking, oh, who is this? And like you said, it's just one of those songs that kind of sticks with you and gets your attention. Last thing I'll touch on with the Black Crowes, because I have other stuff to talk about, is one of the things that was interesting to me was the Led Zeppelin connections. And you talk about kind of Uncle Bob with Robert Plant, and then, some of the great shows with Jimmy Page. Like, what is that like to have, you're getting your chance to play, and everybody growing up is like, oh, it'd be great to play with those guys when I grow. And it's just a dream. It's nothing that's ever going to happen, except that it did happen for you.
Well, we should mention that we are recording this on Robert Plant's 77th birthday. So,
well, there
happy
you go.
birthday, Bob. The thing that saved me probably from losing my mind was I didn't grow up a Led Zeppelin fan. I became one at the age of 20, 21. I really finally dove in. I knew their music. I was more than peripherally aware of it, but I just never sat down with the records as a kid and like dove in. You know what I mean? Like, you'd hear it on the radio all the time, but I didn't really fully spend time with Led Zeppelin until I started playing drums, which was a great time because everything about John Bonham's drumming just immediately felt like the way drums are supposed to feel. I really had a immediate connection I was already, I mean, Ringo's drumming is stamped into my DNA because I spent my childhood years listening to Beatles records nonstop. I couldn't get away from that stuff if I tried. But Zeppelin was the first stuff I really dug into as a drummer, as a new drummer with a kit in a band. And so that was hugely important to me to understand. Not that I could do it, but I felt it. I was like, okay, because Ringo swings and John Bonham swings, and there's a lot of connective DNA in the way that they both play. So all this to say, when we met Robert Plant in 1990, we were touring for Shake Your Moneymaker, and it was we went out and did a few club tours. We did a couple months with Aerosmith opening. That was a big deal. That was our first like arena tour as an opening act. And then we did a month with Heart. And that was cool. It was fine, but it wasn't as cool, because by 1990, Heart was very pop. They weren't like rocking like they had been. Mm-hmm. But our third tour was opening for Robert Plant. And it was the greatest time we'd ever had in our lives up to that point, because he was really cool, gracious, accommodating, wonderful guy, heart of gold, tremendous storyteller. He made us feel not just welcome, but like he really wanted us to be there. He gave us such confidence, and he was very, very encouraging. And so we all felt, every member of the band felt like, hey, that's our buddy. From the first album on, we had Robert Plant in our corner, and we would play at European festivals and see him. And it was always the same. Hey, how's it going? How's it going? And because I hadn't grown up obsessing over him and, as a kid, it was always a little easier. Now, in 1990, if Paul McCartney or Ringo Starr or George Harrison had walked into the dressing room, I would have fallen over dead. Make no mistake about it. But, it was a little easier with Robert. In 1995, we played in London, and Robert came to see us, and he brought along Jimmy. So the first time we met Jimmy was after one of our own shows at the Royal Albert Hall. And Robert walks in the dressing room, and everybody's like, hey, and we always called him Uncle Bob. And everyone's like, hey, Uncle Bob. And he goes, I brought a friend along. And then I can still remember like the collective almost gasp of, oh my, because here's Robert, that's our friend. Mm-hmm. And there's Jimmy Page, and there's Robert and Jimmy. And oh my God, that's Led Zeppelin. It's like the energy in the room changes when it's one of them and the other one shows up. It's just undeniable. You can be sitting there with Robert, you can be sitting there with Jimmy, and it's fine. It's one thing. But when the other guy shows up, it's like 1 + 1 = 12 in energy terms. Like, and it's not from them. It's pure projection from everyone else in the room. And it's just undeniable. And so Jimmy was great, really supportive, and just loved. First time seeing the band, he was very complimentary. And then about a week later, he flew to Paris and ended up sitting in and jamming with us. And so then suddenly we're friends with both these guys. All this to say, 4 years later, Jimmy had a one-off gig in London, needed a backup band for the night. And our mutual friend, the photographer, Ross Halfin, said, well, the Black Crowes are coming to London. Maybe put your event the weekend they're in town. Maybe they could be your band. And so, we get a phone call like, hey, you guys have a night off on a Sunday. Do you want to stay in London one extra night and do a set with Jimmy as his band? And of course, the answer to that question is
yes.
Yes, we do. Yes. As a matter of fact, we do. And so that was just a one-off. It was going to be a 45-minute set. A bunch of other artists were involved. Other people were playing, and we were going to get on stage and just play with Jimmy for 45 minutes. And we rehearsed on a Friday. We did the gig on a Sunday, woke up on Monday and thought that's Apex. It'll never be cooler than that. We just played with Jimmy Page for 45 minutes. And the tour ended. We went home, and lo and behold, a couple weeks later, his manager called our manager and said, Jimmy was thinking about touring. What do you guys think? And again, the answer is yes, indeed. Yes. So it was just a monumental surprise. It sort of fell into our lap that he wanted to go out and play some shows with us. And so that led to a six-date tour in the fall of 99. We did 3 New York cities, 1 Worcester, Mass., which is a suburb of Boston, and 2 Los Angeles. And again, that's it. 6 shows. Now we'll really rehearse. Now we'll really get it together. A 2.5-hour set of a lot of Led Zeppelin and a few Black Crowes songs and some covers. And that was, again, the greatest 6 shows ever. So much fun. And then that tour ends, and then suddenly every promoter in the world's like, what about us? Right. Next thing you know, we're booking another tour for the year 2000. And so, like most of the best things in life, it just it happened very naturally and organically, and it just kind of grew into this thing that was looking back, it was the most fun. It was the one time where what you were doing in reality was very much aligned with like what you had said, what you would have dreamed about as a much younger musician. Like I mean, it made perfect sense as it was happening. Playing those songs with Jimmy, I was very confident, very comfortable, very excited, but at no point do you feel like this is too crazy. It just feels like, hey, this is what we're doing, and it's really good. That said, I can tell you the very first rehearsal we did, when Jimmy said, "Did you guys learn Whole Lot of Love?" And everyone goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, let's play that." And then he turns to me and he's looking, and he's just kind of a little shoulder shimmy just to get his head straight. And he kind of shakes off his head. And Jimmy doesn't do anything with a guitar half-ass. When you're in rehearsal, you might as well be at Wembley Stadium. He only knows one way to play guitar, and that is all in. And the very first time he played that riff and was just holding, and his whole body is vibrating with it because he's just trying to find the feel. And I mean, I'm looking at him, he's 5 feet away from me, and I'm just thinking, I'm playing a Whole Lot of Love with Jimmy Page. And we're in a rehearsal room in London. There's 7 people there. No one's ever going to see this. But that was can't escape that moment of, you got to be kidding me. This is unfrickin' believable.
And lots of other great stories and hard to handle, the life and death of the Black Crowes, and that I could go on and on with that. We'll move on and let people that haven't already gotten the book go get the book to read more about those experiences. So you mentioned earlier you were going to be a broadcasting major.
Yep.
Which didn't seem right at the time, and now of course that's what you're doing. You had Steve Gorman Sports on Fox Sports, and now you've got Steve Gorman Rocks on Westwood One. You've got Gorman in the Morning up in Minneapolis. What has that experience been like, being able to connect with other artists, not just in the world of music? I was running the other day and listening to the podcast of your show, and you were talking to Spike Lee. Like,
right.
what a cool interview. So what has that transition been like into the world of broadcasting? And honestly, that's kind of why I started this podcast a few years ago. I had been a broadcasting major, and when I stopped coaching, I was like, well, let's try to give it a shot and see what we can do. And I'm much more of an amateur setup than what you are doing, but fun nonetheless. So what's that been like, and being able to connect with people from kind of that side of the microphone?
Well, it's been great. The benefit to my broadcasting career was that it did start in my 40s. You know what I mean? I didn't go into it originally thinking this is going to be a full-time thing ever. I was a fan of sports talk radio. Well, there were shows I liked and plenty of I didn't, but I found myself in the early 2000s thinking, man, there's a lane for me somewhere. There's like a music and sports hybrid show. When I moved to Nashville in 2004, it wasn't very long before I really found myself thinking about it a lot, because in Nashville, especially, there's throw a rock, you're going to hit a musician. Mm-hmm. And every band has at least one big sports fan in it. You know what I mean? In my mind, I was like, if I could get a show going where we had musicians talking about sports, and then get athletes on the show, and maybe some comedians, because I had a lot of friends in the comedy world who love sports and music both equally. And I just realized there's a more entertaining way to do sports talk at a time when it was still really stale and very stat, and we'll beat you because of this, and the refs, and a lot of typical fan bitching. And I wasn't interested in that. So it really just sort of fell into place when I was doing Sunday nights in Nashville. A program director asked for me to be a weekly guest on a show that I had sat in on a few times. And I said, I'd rather do my own show. And this is on 104.5 The Zone. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, musicians talking sports with a comedian every now and again. That's all I said. And he said, okay, let's try it on Sunday night. And I said, okay. And like that Sunday night, I'm in a studio. Now, I had sat in on a lot of shows before, but the first time I put on a mic and said, this is Steve Gorman Sports, I felt like I had talked myself into a prison sentence. I was like, what did I just do? Because now it was just me, and it was only for an hour. And I kid you not, man, it was the longest hour of my life. I was suddenly going, sitting in on someone else's show and being the guest, that's all. Yeah, that's all unicorns and rainbows. But doing it yourself was like, oh my God, I am woefully underprepared. That said, I faked it pretty well and then realized, okay, I got to really do some prep. I got to really think about what I want this to be. Over a few years' time, I got to a place where I was doing it, 5 nights a week in Nashville. And again, for terms of like national radio, it's a smaller market. It's not a top 20 market. And it was on a station at night when I started doing it 5 nights a week. It wasn't the zone. I was on the game, a much smaller signal. It didn't feel like there was a lot of stakes. There wasn't a lot of pressure. And I was able to see it in real time as I'm just going to the batting cage every night. I'm just learning how to hit the ball. But at the same time, having been a musician in a band for so long, the idea of practicing radio didn't make sense. I had to be on the air live, and I had to be terrible live in real life to have the adrenaline to actually work hard enough to get better. Because, I had guys say, well, let's go in and just do a few practice shows. And I was like, no, I can't do that. Unless it's real, I will not care. I can't, I'm an adrenaline freak, and I've been playing live music for too long to go into the rehearsal space for a month. So it just kept going along like that. And I, like I said, again, thankfully by this point, I'm in my mid 40s. So I'm not seeing it as, this isn't my career. This is a cool thing that I'm just going to see how far I can take it. It's like, I snuck in the side door at the party is how I looked at it.
Right.
And then when I got picked up by Fox Sports Radio, believe me, I mean, I had figured it out. I thought I was doing a good show, but I was also just blown away that I got a phone call out of the blue from a guy at a national network. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, are you high? And turns out he wasn't. But yeah, he put me on. I started in 2014. And at that point, I realized, like, wow, I guess it's time I really take this a lot more seriously. But I couldn't do music. I was still in the Black Crowes at that time. So I never thought I would be doing like music-based radio. It's just too weird to be a full-time musician and talking about other artists. And it was weird to interview musicians having been on the other side of that so many times.
Well, I always think about that. I always think about that when I see like a coach that gets knocked out of the playoffs, and all of a sudden they're on set being an analyst.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be strange.
Well, it is like that. It's not like, because people had said, well, if you're an athlete and you retire, I said, yeah, but I'm not retired. I'm still playing. I'm just not playing this year. And then when the Black Crowes sort of exploded, and it was by 2014, by that summer, it was totally over. It wasn't going to come back. It certainly didn't seem that way. And I had another band that was trying to get it going, Trigger Hippie, but it was just a weird, and it wasn't the public perception. To the guy walking down the street, they think of me like I'm some rock star. But to me, I was like, I would feel really weird doing music. Do I still want to be a musician? Do I want to be in a band? Do I want to do radio? And I was like, I'm just going to keep it in sports and other things. And if I have musicians on my show, it's on a sports show. We can still talk about music and we can still talk about whatever, but I just felt more comfortable in the framework of this is sports talk, but it's not normal sports talk.
Right.
But after a few years, that all just went away, and radio's radio. Entertainment is entertainment. That's what I'm doing. And so when I got an offer to do a syndicated classic rock show in 2018, that I was like, yeah, sure, let's go. That'll be great. No problem. But initially it was just an adjustment I had to make within my own central nervous system to how do I see myself, because I'd just been a drummer for so long, and that's all I ever wanted to be. And then recognizing like, no, this is cool too. I really like this. I like going to work and then going home every night. That was a nice switch. I miss going to certain places, but I don't miss touring. I miss the gig, but I don't miss the other 22 hours in the day. And so getting used to a job where I could be home every night, it was a very nice adjustment. As much as I was trying to figure out who am I was really happy to not be getting on a tour bus ever.
Yeah, I bet. Again, talking with Steve Gorman here, and Steve, one of the last things I want to touch on is Birdies for Brittney is coming up right after Labor Day. And like I said, I had your brother Doug on last year. Anybody listening who wants to dive even deeper into that can go back and find that episode. But his daughter, Brittney, your niece, passed away, and this is a fundraiser, a golf tournament, and then every other year has a music element involved with it that is raising money to honor her, to support scholarships. maybe if you want to talk a little bit about Birdies for Brittney and what it's all about.
Yeah, it's I think it initially started as most of these things do. It's just almost a desperate way to try to channel grief into something positive. My brother, obviously, but really my entire family was just blindsided and devastated by Brittney's death. It's still something that's very present and visceral in our lives, very much in my life. And so the idea was not necessarily to try to do something to raise funds for the type of cancer Brittney had, but more like what was her life all about for the entirety of her life? What were her passions? Where was she putting her volunteer time? What issues was she concerned with? What did she want to see change? How did she want to improve things for people in Bowling Green? And so the focus is on a pretty wide list of things, but to what you said, the coolest one to me is just the scholarship funds that we find students in schools in Bowling Green and Warren County that are doing extracurricular things in the same realms that Brittney was passionate about. Kids with similar interests, kids with similar dreams. It's a really nice way to honor Brittney by finding a kid and saying, "Oh, by the way, here's $5,000 for your semester at Western. Here's this, here's that." It's just very much moving forward. It's like a perpetual way to remember a woman who, was an extraordinary member of that community and a really, really wonderful person. And, when Brittney passed, it's been somehow, 8 years. The following weeks that I spent on Bowling Green a lot, the number of people I bumped into, not just at the funeral and stuff, but I mean in the subsequent weeks, the number of people that would just come up to me and go, you're Brittney's uncle, right? And I'd say, yeah. And then they would just tell me a story. I was in 9th grade and this happened and Brittney saved the day, and it would be like, wow. And then the next person, that went on so many times. It really was that kind of case of like, well, man, I knew she was pretty great, but I didn't know she was this great, holy crap, she was really something special. And there's just, those things would make me feel great. And then I'd go home and those stories would break my heart all over again. And so I think the initial impetus was, we got to do something with this. We got a lot of energy here. Let's try to redirect it into something positive. And now, all these years later, this event has turned into, because of Doug and his family's tremendous keeping their shoulder to the wheel and really turning this into a special event. It's just fantastic. It sells out way in advance every year. 2 whole groups of people go out. There's a wait list, and they're raising a ton of money, and they just did it the right way. They patiently built it, and it's a really fun tournament. I can't be at this year's. I think this is only the second one I've missed, but it's a really great time. And anybody who has been involved in it would echo those sentiments. I know that much.
Yeah, and Brittney was on one of the first teams I ever coached. So when I was finishing school at Western, I helped coach at Bowling Green High and was coaching the JV team. And she was a wonderful person. And I think the support of the event also speaks just to what people think of your entire family there in Bowling Green and wanting to support them. And we will, just like I did last year, I'll put some links to support the cause in the episode notes. So if you're listening, be sure to check those out and help make an impact with Birdies for Brittney. Steve, anything else? Any upcoming projects or anything for us to know about before we get you out of here?
Yeah, I can't tell you anything other than within the next couple of weeks, you'll hear all about my next band. I have a project that's going to be unveiled, playing shows later this year, but we've not made the official announcement yet. So there's no sense spoiling it right here. But by the end of August, it will be, you'll be hearing about it.
You mean that this wasn't your top, the 10-man podcast wasn't your top pick to break that news to the world?
I'm sorry to say it was a coin toss, man. It was a coin toss.
All right. Damn, I just missed out.
I gave you heads, but it came up tails.
Sorry. Shit. All right. Well, win some, you lose some. But no,
that's how it goes.
Well, we'll keep our eye out for that too. And thanks again for spending some time with me. It's great to hear some of these stories, and we will continue to follow all the good work that I know you will keep doing.
Right on. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks again to Steve Gorman for joining the podcast. I had a blast learning more about his background, the Black Crowes, and his broadcasting career. Even though we weren't the outlet for breaking information about his new band, I hope you'll keep your eyes and ears peeled for that in the coming days. I also hope you'll check out the episode notes for more information about Birdies for Brittney. Steve's stories were fun to hear, but the timing of the episode was not a coincidence. Please help support the cause. As always, I appreciate you listening. Don't forget to support the 10 Man Podcast by liking or subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or anywhere you find your favorite podcast. You can also follow on X and Instagram at 10 Man Pod or check out our Facebook page. We love your feedback or ideas for future episodes through any of the previously mentioned platforms or by emailing 10manpod@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you on another episode of the 10 Man Podcast.